name is Shelley Zaborowski, and I have the privilege of serving as the Executive Director of the Nebraska Alumni Association at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. And on behalf of all four of the University of Nebraska System Alumni Associations at UNL, UNO, UNK, and UNMC, we welcome you and thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to have a conversation with President Gold. Alumni are the largest and most constant constituency that a university has. Alumni involvement is critical to our university's success, and so we are truly grateful for your interest and passion in creating a stronger future for our university. This is one of the largest virtual gatherings of alumni we've ever seen, with nearly 600 registrants. We have disabled some of the interactive features that we like to use in a town hall setting, but please know that your questions and comments are important to us, and we are monitoring the chat closely. We'll start out this morning with some introductions, followed by opening remarks from Dr. Jeff Gold and Dr. Matt Bloomstead. Then we will open the floor for your questions. We received many questions during the registration process, and you're welcome to submit more during the Q&A portion. Dr. Gold will probably cover a lot of these topics in his opening remarks, but we'll also take some questions during the second half of this town hall. Please know that while all of your questions are important and relevant, we only have an hour today, so we probably won't be able to get to all of them. This town hall is being recorded and will be available for viewing afterward. It may take us a day or so to get it online, but we will send a follow-up email with a link. And now I am pleased to introduce the 9th president of the University of Nebraska System, Dr. Jeff Gold. Dr. Gold is a trained pediatric cardiac surgeon and a nationally recognized higher education and healthcare leader and advocate. He was most recently the chancellor of the University of Nebraska Medical Center for 10 years. Also with us today to help answer questions is Dr. Matt Bloomstead, the University of Nebraska's Associate Vice President for Government Relations. Dr. Bloomstead is the former Commissioner of Education for the Nebraska Department of Education and is a 3-time graduate of the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. Welcome, Drs. Gold and Bloomstead. The floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Shelley, and thanks to all of you for joining us this morning on this chilly Nebraska day. And as I love to say, if the weather is the most challenging thing we have to talk about on a given day, we are having a spectacularly good day. So there are a number of things that I wanted to share, but most importantly is to express gratitude for the opportunity to be with you today, and most importantly than that is to be the president of your university system. I take that responsibility very seriously. I'm now, a little over 7 months into this opportunity, and I can tell you that a day doesn't go by that I'm not incredibly proud and honored and humbled by this university, what we've done today, what our legacy is, what our alumni do, and most importantly, by our vision for tomorrow. We are quite busy in many different ways, and I'd like to provide a brief outline and then use most of my time with you today to answer your questions, as I'm sure that you have many. It looks like we're well over 300 participants now, which, given the fact that we've opened this webinar just a little over 3 minutes ago, that is hard to believe that on this morning that we have that much participation. It's really very exciting. I also, before I provide a brief outline and some updates, just want to say that your diplomas from the university, whether they're undergraduate degrees, certificates, graduate degrees, professional degrees, combinations of the above, are critically important. And that value ebbs and flows with the value of the university. What I like to say, and the way it's been described to me, is that your diploma is not like a fixed income instrument where, like a bond yield, that you get X% per year regardless of what happens to the company or to the municipality that is paying you. It is much more like an investment in a private equity firm that ebbs and flows with the value of that firm. And it is my job to make sure that your diploma and what that means to you and to the outside world that you interact with continues to grow in value on a day-by-day basis. One of the most important things that we are doing right now relates to strategic planning. And not just what's in the plan, because we have had excellent strategic plans in the past. I participated in a lot of work on the early days with President Bounds, and then again in the early days with President Carter. But the bigger question is, how do we define the future? Not just how do we measure the present, but how do we define the future? What are the metrics for that definition of the future? And the way we have chosen to characterize it is the way we described the vision for the university during the investiture ceremonies of September 5th. And in those days, and at that time, we talked about an odyssey to the extraordinary and ask the question, what would it take to take an institution such as ours, all of our campuses, colleges, institutes, centers, programs, extensions, clinics, etc., and go from what is truly excellent to that which is extraordinary, truly extraordinary. And that resulted in some preliminary work uh, that has 5 different foundational pillars within it, in no particular order. They relate to extraordinary excellence in teaching and learning, and extraordinary excellence in research and creative activity, extraordinary excellence in partnerships and the building of new public-private relationships, extraordinary excellence in our culture and what it means to be an alum, what it means to be a student, what it means to be a faculty member. And I don't just mean in ways of safety. Of course, that is very important, but the sense of pride, the sense of enthusiasm needs a sharper definition. And then the fifth and final one of these foundational pillars relates to stewardship, effectiveness, and efficiency of the precious resources that we have. And I don't just mean the precious resources that are financial, that are provided through the generosity of our alumni and foundations and so many others, but I mean it more broadly in terms of the responsibility that we have to educate the next generation, provide cutting edge research, discovery, and creative activity, and to build meaningful and effective partnerships that are sustainable long into the future. Or put differently, what does the extraordinary public higher education system of the future look like? And how can we take the amazing institution that we have and continue to move in that direction? From these 5 foundational pillars, we've developed 16 strategies. The goal was to have 3 or 4 for each of the 5 foundational pillars. We ended up with an even number of 16. Whether that'll be the case or not long term remains to be defined. However, these are now all out for public comment across the entire spectrum of not just our faculty, students, and staff, but more broadly across multiple constituent groups. And I am planning to share the link to that information with you in the email that will go out following this webinar today. But I wanted to set the stage for it to say that this is an opportunity that we have between now and the next several weeks for you to tell us, to tell me what's missing, what we ought to do differently, what we should emphasize, what we should de-emphasize. And indeed, in every strategic planning process, not only does it have to define what it is you're going to do, but very importantly, it has to define that which you are not going to do, the metrics by which you are going to achieve those goals, aspirations, tactics, initiatives, strategies, and then most importantly, the accountability. And what I mean by that is that most universities build phenomenally laudatory strategic plans. They're pretty good at putting metrics on them, some of which are achievable, some of which are aspirational in nature, but they don't drill down to the level where it really makes a difference. And what I mean by that is if we have a system-wide strategic plan, what does it mean to the Lincoln campus? What does it mean to the Omaha campus? What does it mean to Kearney or to the Med Center or to the Institute of Agriculture and Natural Resources? And by the way, if we know what it means to the campus, let's take the Lincoln campus, for instance, what does it mean to the College of Engineering versus the College of Education? What does it mean to the Department of Civil Engineering versus Mechanical Engineering? What does it mean to the Division of Infectious Disease versus the Division of Gerontology within the College of Medicine, Department of Internal Medicine? And so creating metrics that will drill down to every campus, every college, every department, every division is going to be critically important to achieve the goals that we are aspirationally going to be moving towards on this odyssey from the excellent to the truly extraordinary. I am hoping that we'll have an opportunity to talk a little bit more about this in the question and answer session today. Now, also, it would be remiss if I didn't point out that a combination of the changes that are going on within the federal government currently, the changes that are going on in the state government, and the changes that are ongoing within the university are very complex, and they all work in some ways synergistically. In other ways, they are not synergistic. And I hope we'll have some time through the question and answer period to address any questions or concerns that you may have. But I do want you to know that we are in an all-out effort to fully understand as much as we can about all of these changes. We could spend the entire remainder of our time together today talking about the changes that are going on in intercollegiate athletic programs, particularly in Division I and Division II programs. Spent just a ton of time recently better understanding that through the eyes of the Big Ten and through other conferences. And that is a tremendous amount of work that is ongoing by our athletic directors and the leadership of our athletic programs as well. And while budgetarily that represents a relatively small component of what we do, from an outside-facing aspect, it represents a great proportion of how the university is viewed. And so navigating these waters is going to be critically important as well. Before I shift back to Matt Bloomstead, who will give us a bit of a legislative government relations update, I just want to tell you that I have never been more proud to represent this great university system. As you know, I am a Nebraskan by choice, not a Nebraskan by birth. You also know that while I have been here for, I'm now in my 12th year, hard to believe how that happens. I have no idea how my grandchildren became 8.5 years old. It just sort of magically happened, and there they are, individuals of their own, with their own opinions, etc. That does happen to us. But I will tell you this, having spent 25 years of my life in and out of the operating theater, taking care of other people's children and loved family members, I understand fully what it means to take ultimate responsibility for other people's livelihoods, other people's well-being, indeed the young children of more than 20,000 families that I've had an opportunity to care for during my career. And that is very much how I view our students and faculty and staff of this great university system. We are a large and extremely important component of the state economically. We're critically important for workforce development, research, discovery, creative activity, outreach, and all of those other areas that are mission critical to what we do every day. We're a very important part of the economic impact of the state, the largest employer, for instance, in the state, and a tremendous asset to the economy of the future of the state. But at the end of the day, we are a large and very successful family. We need to care for each other that way, and we need to be able to say that we treat every student, faculty, and staff member as if they are a beloved member of our own family, and we care for them the same way we would care for those that are part of our immediate family. I will tell you, in 25 years of the practice of cardiac surgery, the only thing families ever asked me is, are you going to take care of my child the way you would take care of your own? And the minute you can convince them through your body language, through your empathy, through your words, that that is exactly what you're going to do, that is what builds the trust and the respect and indeed the confidence to do what is sometimes a very complex and difficult thing to do. And there is no question in my mind that the opportunity to build a trusting relationship with the communities that we serve as the steward of their greatest resources, their children, their family members, their loved ones, that we have that tremendous responsibility. So I look forward to your questions. I've taken more than enough of your time in this introductory few minutes. And I guess, Shelley, I just turn it over to Dr. Bloomstead. Would that be okay?
That would be perfect. Thank you.
Thanks, Shelley. Thanks, Dr. Gold. First of all, it's really I think this is amazing that we're doing something that's across all the alumni associations for the university system. So thanks, Shelley, and thanks to all of the alumni leadership for making this possible. I'm a proud alum. I think that came up already. Three-time graduate of University of Nebraska-Lincoln. My mom was a graduate of Kearney. Of course, back then it was still Kearney State. But I'm the second generation college goer, myself or my family coming to the University of Nebraska is obviously life-changing. It set my whole course. And so the fact that I'm there, I'm also a husband of an alum. I'm a father of an alum, and I'm a father of a current student. So I'm all in, Dr. Gold, on our degrees, and really appreciate how everyone's come to the table today. I want to share just a little bit about my role. I'm the Associate Vice President for Government Relations. I'm very honored to be in this role. When Dr. Gold gave me that opportunity to join him, I was very pleased. I've joked with folks that I've known Chancellor Gold, Dr. Gold, I've known Jeff. I now know President Gold. I'm most afraid of President Gold. I've joked about that because he is laser focused on getting the right things done for the university, and he knows how to really move and motivate people, myself included. So I'm honored to just work for him, but even more honored to work for the whole system and for the state of Nebraska. We're at a critical moment in time, as Dr. Golden already noted. Our budget process is in place right now. It's the state budget process is based on a biennium. Our budget hearing is actually next week on February 25th. The hearing will start at 1:30. We are not first up, but we will take a significant portion of the afternoon to describe the importance of the university to the state of Nebraska. Certainly encourage you. You can go through the legislative website and be able to link into that particular hearing room. But we will be describing the importance of the university and the importance of our budget request. As many folks know, it's been in the paper that our budget request was essentially what was asked, about a 3.5% increase to address salaries and other kind of leveled investments in our core appropriations. And so we followed suit and did that. What was presented in the governor's budget was something less than that. And so, in fact, it was a negative 2% overall. We've been working almost daily with appropriators about the importance of the investments in the university overall, the importance of really making this an investment, and we'll continue to do that. We track other legislation as well, things that have an impact on the university, lots of different topics. And what I'm amazed by is the depth and breadth of the knowledge across our university system, from UNO to UNMC to UNK to UNL. You find expertise that is globally known, right? And it's so important that we're able to continue to contribute to that. Given the fact that I was a former commissioner of education, our partnerships across P20 are extremely important to me as well. And we see that in community, across community in the whole state. And we want to make sure that folks feel engaged in that particular work. So as you're watching for legislation, as you see things that are happening, I want to be able to encourage you to be involved. And the one ask I have of you for today, and there's other asks I'd love to have for you, but I would like you to take a look at our NU Advocates approach. We have a website where you can actually join NU Advocates and be part of our conversations with legislators and be trained up and talk about things that are relevant to the university. It's really important that we look at what's happening within the state. As Dr. Gold also mentioned, what's happening federally is a significant issue for us as well. So tracking and making sure that our delegation, certainly at the very least, understands the importance of the university to the state, to the economy, to the people, to the workforce, to the importance of just making Nebraska continuing to be a great place to live. And I think kind of lastly, we are all kind of protecting the investment that we have made. I appreciate Dr. Gold mentioning that as well. as I think about this so often, I made my investment in Nebraska, and I'm staying here. And even though Dr. Gold says he's Nebraskan by choice, I also am a Nebraskan by choice. Everyone who's here chooses to be in this spot, and actually, it's that great opportunity for me to recognize what a great place this is. I know I have the depth of relationships across the state, friends, family, you name it. But the reality is we have to kind of lock arm in arm. And so I appreciate very much the opportunity to be with you today, Shelley and the alumni. And we'll be glad to take questions as they come. And I really rarely have to prepare Dr. Gold for anything. He actually is doing the opposite with me often. So it's a fantastic thing. He speaks so fluently about what Nebraska is and what it means to us. But I'm really proud to work for the university.
Super. Thank you, Matt. And I'm glad you mentioned advocates. In that follow-up email that we'll send, we will include a link to the advocates website for those of you who are interested in learning a little bit more about that and getting involved. So our first question is a nice segue, I think, from your comments, Matt and Dr. Gold. This one comes from Jay Marie, who is a UNL alum, class of 1988 and 2022. And Jay Marie asks if you can please explain a little bit more about why the state budget is so important in supporting the university and what challenges we are facing during this legislative session.
Well, why don't I start, and then Matt can provide some additional color if we need it. The state budget represents a very significant part of the overall university budget. In total, we're about, on the academic side, in the absence of the clinical side, about a $3 billion budget. And in that totality, approximately $700 million of that is state appropriation. Approximately $350 million of that relates to tuition, and then the rest relates to things such as fees, auxiliaries, contracts, ticket sales, all of that kind of stuff that adds into the totality of the budget. So the ability to make higher education affordable and accessible, and to be sure that we deliver a quality, high-value proposition to future and current students is critically important. Indeed, for the benefit of our alumni, that defines the value of your diploma, because if something were to ever happen that would reduce the perception of the quality of the University of Nebraska degree, heaven forbid, it would really change the value to each of you, as well as it would change the value to those that will be receiving those diplomas in the future. And so the state has year over year tried very hard to provide close to inflationary growth. Unfortunately, they have not been able to do that. Over the last decade, the state growth has actually gone up by about 140 or $150 million over 10 years, which is roughly $150 million less than the inflationary changes. So indeed, that in and of itself represents about a $150 million cut that we have had to absorb to our budget. But of great concern, as Matt said, this year, on the request of the state, we put in a very simple mathematical inflation-related number of 3.5%, which was exactly the same thing the state asked us to submit from the state fiscal officers, the same thing that the community colleges and the state colleges put in, of 3.5% to the core operating budget, plus several other elements relating to presidential scholars, a small amount of growth in research, which relates to our membership in the Association of American Universities, the finalization of the 2020 appropriation for Project Health, which has been a line item and reserved in the budget now for these last 4.5 years. And all of that shaken and not stirred, for those of you that understand the metaphor, going back to my youth and old James Bond movies, that went forward through the Board of Regents last August. It was unanimously approved by the Coordinating Commission of Public Higher Education. And that resulted in not reflecting that in the governor's budget, but actually what is in totality a very significant reduction. The current proposal is for a 2.07% core budget reduction, not increase, which totals up to more than just over $14 million, $14.25 million per year, plus an $11 million reduction in biomedical research funding, which came out of the tobacco settlement funds known as the Healthcare Cash Fund. In addition to that, there are a number of other legislated, what we would call mandated tuition remissions. A tuition remission is not like a scholarship. A tuition remission is essentially a discount on our part on tuition, fees, room and board, etc. So to give you an idea, we have something that's been around for a very long time called Regent scholarships. Well, a Regent scholarship is a remission. That is to say, we discount tuition to zero for any student that meets the academic criteria of being a, quote, Regent scholar. This is not like somebody is paying us. That totals roughly between $40 and $45 million a year. But the state has added several other categories. For instance, primary responders. For instance, firefighters. For instance, veterans. There's a bill pending right now in the legislature to provide free tuition to all officers in the corrections system, and by the way, all of their dependents. So these are state mandated tuition remissions. As of last June, that totaled approximately $6 million a year on the state mandated components. And with the additions that we're looking at for next year, that would add up to about another $8 million, what would, for us, be a budget gap that would have to be closed. Now, of course, none of this takes into consideration of what we will do with tuition for the next biennium. And that's a decision that is always made by the Board of Regents in June after we have an idea of, in formal fashion, what the state does, what the governor chooses to line item or not line item, etc. But just to give you a little bit of a ratio, for every 1% of state dollars, that equals roughly 2% on tuition. So for instance, if we were to make up for that 2.07% cut to the core budget, that would roughly equal just over a 4.25% tuition increase in each year of the biennium. If we would add into that the $11 million shortfall in the healthcare cash fund, that would equal another 1.8% of state cut or another 3.6% in tuition. And so we, of course, are going to do everything we can to keep higher education affordable and accessible across the state. That is our core mission. And we're going to do everything we can, believe me, to protect and preserve the value of a University of Nebraska degree, to protect and preserve the value of your degree, to be sure that that still increases in value year over year and semester over semester. So perhaps a bit of a lengthy answer, Shelley, but that's where we are as it relates to the state. And I hope Jane Marie understands that. And, as Matt said, and as you said just recently, the advocacy website are critically important for the opportunity to share updated information. Nebraska alums are well connected into the state. Many of them have families in the state, and within the state, everybody knows their local elected officials. They meet them at their favorite watering hole or athletic event or wherever that might be, and they have an opportunity to say, listen, I attended a webinar today with Jeff Gold, and I learned about some of the concerns of the state budget, and what do you think about that? And clearly, our university, and I'm sure we'll get a chance to talk about it later, has great impact on the economy of the state of Nebraska. And we need to preserve and protect that both short-term and long-term.
Thank you. Yes, it's a very complex situation, but I think we're all here today because we agree that the university is so important to our state and to each of us individually. Dr. Bloomstead, anything to add on that?
The one thing I'd say is this guy does that without notes, just so you understand that. I know we had that comment today, so it's amazing. So no, I don't have anything else to add right now.
Okay, thank you. Our next question comes from Gildas, UNO class of 2020, although I have to say that a lot of alumni submitted similar versions of this question, and it's been popular also in the live Q&A. How will the reduction in federal funding how will the reduction in federal funding for research specifically have an impact on the universities? And Dr. Gold, you also mentioned the AAU. How does that factor in?
Sure. Well, first of all, this is a rapidly moving sequence of events as some of the executive orders, the recently elected United States Congress start to take form on Capitol Hill. And indeed, immediately after this webinar, I'm heading to the airport. I'm going to be in Washington tonight, tomorrow, and Saturday morning, meeting with different folks in the both in the legislature and in various departments. I'll spend most of my day tomorrow in the Pentagon talking about some of our research and programmatic relationships with the Department of Defense. But this is what we know right now. And I'll give you some examples. The media has been very full of the cessation of funding for USAID. So, we have a number of relationships with USAID, the largest of which is with the Dirty Water for Food Institute. And that's a $19.6 million grant contract over 5 years that we have with them to provide counseling, advice, and services for developing countries who are working on new types of irrigation systems in order to increase their crop production and make them more agriculturally independent of other parts of the world. So that funding was terminated. And that means that we have a number of employees, I don't know exactly how many, that we have contracted for a 5-year period. We're in the first year of that 5-year contract. So we've made commitments for 5 years to individuals to execute the work of that project. There are probably several dozen people that are being paid to do that. And there has been a temporary restraining order that has been issued by the courts to better understand the wisdom and the impact of that determination. If that restraining order goes forward and if funds continue to flow, we will continue to operate that through the Dirty Water for Food Institute. If it does not, we will have to cease and desist and make whatever decisions that we need to make to be sure that we're compliant with whatever laws, regulations, statutes there are. However, the bigger issue that you may have read about in the newspaper relates to something called indirect cost recovery, or IDC as it's known in the trade. Indirect cost recovery is a part of almost every federal research grant and contract and on almost every private philanthropic research grant and contract that we agree to do. And on the federal side, and what the area of interest has been now is the National Institutes of Health, which represents about half, or roughly $300+ million a year of federal research funding, largely between UNL and UNMC, although some at UNO and some at UNK, carries with it approximately a 51 to 53% indirect cost component as well. And the reason all grants have both direct and indirect components is that the direct component goes to the research scientist, what we call the investigator. And that pays for the chemicals, the test tubes, if necessary, laboratory animals. It pays for technicians. It pays for travel. It pays for whatever that individual researcher needs to accomplish that work. But it does not pay for the light bulbs and floor wax. It doesn't pay for the heating and cooling of that laboratory. It doesn't pay for the environmental services, the food services. It doesn't pay for public safety. It doesn't pay for the information technology network and computer storage that's necessary to run that research lab. And for us, it's approximately a 2-to-1 ratio. That is, for every dollar that we get for direct costs to do that research, we need about 50 cents to maintain the light and the heat in those research laboratories. Now, over time, almost every 2 years, sometimes every 3 years, we go through a process where there is an algorithmic mathematical determination of what that indirect cost should be. It varies from year to year. It varies from state to state. It varies from institution to institution. UNL is about 53%. UNMC is about 51%. And that's because we are audited for the exact number of research square feet, what it costs us to provide the heat and the cooling, the light bulbs, the security, and those sort of things. And that goes into a mathematical formula determined by the United States Congress that then results in the binding contractual relationship of how much indirect cost recovery we receive for every grant that goes on. And they're all different. Clinical grants are different than basic laboratory grants because it costs more to run a basic science lab than it does to do clinical research. Public health grants are different. They're all different based upon these contractual algorithmic determinations. So what has happened, and again, there has been a temporary restraining order issued, which is going to go to court tomorrow, actually, to stop this. But what has happened is the federal government has issued a mandate saying this is going down to 15%. So approximately a 30%, 35% reduction overall. So these are real costs that we're going to have to absorb. So this is not a cut in the federal budget. This is a transfer to the taxpayers of the state of Nebraska. So the results of this, if this goes forward and is sustained, will mean approximately between the Doherty Water for Food piece and the indirect cost recovery, about a $30 million a year reduction, $31 million a year reduction in the funding of research, which directly, by the way, connects to our how we are ranked and rated for research, and that relates to where we stand regarding to our Big Ten peers, where we stand regarding to our AAU peers and others, which, rankings and ratings are really important, particularly when they're good. We all know that. But it really has to do with, are we really fulfilling the mission of a world-class university system? Are we really on the pathway from excellent to extraordinary? And maintaining these research grants and contracts is, and to a very large extent, the metrics by which we are evaluated. There are many others, but these are critically important metrics where we're pushing back the frontiers of science and discovery, whether it's in the research laboratory out in a public health setting, whether it's on farms and ranches, whether it's in space, whether it's in nuclear energy, in all of those different areas. And it directly relates, just for another minute, I know it's a pretty long-winded answer, Shelley, and I'm sorry, but it also relates to future students because our learners today, they want to be shoulder to shoulder with faculty members that are writing research papers on discovering new techniques, new diagnostics, new treatments, new ways of greening the environment, ways that we can enhance crop and livestock production. They want to be excited by that type of ongoing campus research. Of course, they'd like us to win as many football games as we possibly can as well, and I'm optimistic there, and we can talk about it if you wish. But it all goes hand in hand of what it means to be an extraordinary university.
Absolutely. And please don't apologize. Again, it's a very complex situation and it's difficult to understand even for those of us who are close to it. So appreciate you taking the time to explain that. Moving on to the next question. This one comes to us from Stacy, UNO class of 2014 and 2020. And Stacy asks, given recent federal directives and a quickly changing policy landscape, how is the NU system ensuring that students, faculty, and staff have the ability to engage with diverse perspectives and to continue learning about subjects that reflect a wide range of cultural and intellectual viewpoints? What strategies does the University of Nebraska system have in place to ensure diverse students are not forgotten in regard to recruitment and retention? And I should note that several other versions of this question have been submitted as well.
Yeah, so, this occupies a lot of our time and effort. And this is still rolling out, literally. There was a so-called Dear Colleague letter that was provided to us last weekend, which will certainly have, although it is not carrying with it the force of law, certainly carries with it some very significant language regarding about what we can and can't do as it relates to the Department of Education. Again, putting all of our Pell funding and other federal funding at risk for failures to comply. You know, at the end of the day, we are and will always be a law-abiding organization, and we will do everything that we can to be sure that we communicate openly and effectively with faculty, students, staff, alumni, community members, our legislators, etc. And as these changes are rolling out through various federal communications, we, of course, provide them to our federal delegation on frequent intervals. We provide them to the regents, to key members of the legislature, but also to all of our campus leaders, all of our stakeholders in the communities as well. That doesn't answer the question, though, about what we're going to do. I mean, understanding what our responsibilities are, understanding what the corridors are in which we can operate and not risk things such as educational funding, which is the way that many of our students can afford a college education, is critically important. But at the same time, as I have always said, that our job is to provide accessible, affordable, high quality education. And what I mean by that is we have to live, we have to breathe the value proposition of what that means. And that means, as the governor has said over and over and over again, our children are our future. He doesn't say some of our children are our future. All of our children are our future here in the state of Nebraska. And by the way, I think we need more of them. The reality is we're a small state, and that we have to be able to have a culture here, as we talked about when I addressed strategic planning earlier, that is a welcoming culture that makes people from across the country and indeed from around the world want to live here, work here, raise their families here, and enjoy the good life of Nebraska. And by the way, send their kids, send their family members and colleagues to the University of Nebraska to expand and enhance not just their education, but their experiences and so many other areas as well. And that means that we have to meet these new students and our current students where they are. And every student has different needs. It is not based on necessarily on whether they grew up in a rural or urban community, whether they grew up in Nebraska or Iowa or heaven forbid, on the East Coast or the West Coast. It is based upon what their needs are academically and in a merit-based system where we recruit and retain top quality faculty, and we have an environment and a culture that is welcoming, makes people feel that they belong, and that we can reach out to them and they can reach out to us with their individual needs. But again, all of that has to be done within the corridors of what the statutes and laws allow us to do. That does not risk our students or risk any aspect of our future growth.
I
Certainly,
would
no
just
one can argue with wanting everyone to feel like they are in a position of being welcomed and where they can succeed in their educational quests.
Yeah, one thing I was going to add, Shelley, is just like our campuses are the front door to the state for new residents in many ways. Like we're recruiting people to be in here, and I think about this from a Nebraska perspective, where we're warm and open, and people always say there's people are just not nicer than they are in Nebraska. I think a refocus on that we're really attentive on our campuses to make warm and welcoming environments for every student, every faculty member, every resident of the state, every alum is so important. And I know we all have to carry that message forward. These are difficult times, always as we juggle those things. But as Dr. Gold said, well, we're leading the way on the right way to do that.
Yeah, that's wonderful. You do hear that all the time. This is a warm and welcoming place, and I know it'll continue to be that way. Our next question comes from Bill, UNK, class of 95 and 98. And Bill asks, what do you see as the biggest short-term and long-term goal? So let's look at five years out and then beyond 5 years for long-term challenges and opportunities that are facing the University of Nebraska system.
Well, I think the challenges that face the University of Nebraska system, both short-term and long-term, are the same challenges that face public higher education and even private higher education across the United States. And that is, whether it's resulted from the pandemic, although I will tell you, the sentiment had been changing somewhat prior to the COVID-19 pandemic about the quote value proposition, unquote, of higher education. And a lot of that had to do with the employment opportunities for individuals without higher education, questioning the role of associate degrees versus baccalaureate degrees versus advanced graduate degrees. And what is the value proposition in terms of not just what does it cost, but how much time, how much effort, and what do you get out of it? And the statistics are crystal clear. There is no question that if you look at earning ability, it's plussed up by millions of dollars. If you look at longevity, meaning life expectancy, significantly increased. If you look at quality of life, significantly enhanced with a undergraduate and even more so with a graduate degree. And there are any number of other parameters. You look at debt, you look at children's education, you look at on and on and on. There is no question that higher education and all of education is frankly the only way that will uplift people out of poverty and create genuine social mobility in our community. And by the way, grow the economy of our states across the country, and particularly here in Nebraska, given the fact that the estimates are that between 66 and 72% of all future jobs are going to require at least a baccalaureate degree, if not a graduate degree of some type as well. Just look at what's going on with generative artificial intelligence, whether it affects the ag industry, whether it affects the healthcare industry, whether it affects banking, insurance, manufacturing. I mean, it's just rampant across our society, and that workforce has to be produced somewhere, and it's only going to occur within our great university systems. And like it or not, the state of Nebraska has got only one great university system. And so I think that challenge of trying to make sure that the communities understand that investing in that future is critically important to the future, not just of our state, but more broadly of our nation. Having said that, given our size and given our role, we have a lot of opportunities for leadership. And we have the opportunity to become what I would call a bit narrower and deeper, to focus some of the concentration of our research efforts, to build stronger and better defined public and private partnerships, to enhance, for instance, our relationship with national security and health security across the country and around the world would be one area that I think would be important. To take a leadership role in the bioeconomy, which is a rapidly changing world, which is, I'll never forget, I was recently out on a cow-calf facility out in western Nebraska, and the owner of the facility said to me that he's running a digital corporation now. And that's what he really needs is the workforce that can help him understand how to better employ some of the amazing digital technology that is now available to enhance and increase value in his producer worlds in the cow-calf industry. So that's where our great universities come in. And so we need to continue to define that. We, of course, have to live within our means. And as the budgets ebb and flow, and as the value of a bushel of corn ebbs and flows, we have to understand that, and that is reflected in the resources we have, which just means that we have to be able to prioritize what we do. As I said earlier, have a very solid strategic plan with accountability down to every level, and then create an environment that people want to be here and want to roll up their sleeves and make this university, and in so doing, make Nebraska the best place to be.
Wonderful. Thank you. That's a big question, and we all have a role to play in that, I believe.
Well, the reason that we're here today with all of these many hundreds of alumni is testament to the fact that the degree process, the higher education process, has tremendous value. I mean, you look at the roles that many of our alumni have had. Nebraska and the University of Nebraska punches well above its weight. I'll tell you, when I was first recruited here by J.B. Milliken, he used to say, we're not bad for a square state, and maybe that's why he's in Texas now. It's not a square state. But it's true. We punch way above our weight in terms of national representation, research productivity, the number of degrees that we grant. I mean, we add about 11,000 degree holders to the workforce every year. I mean, think about that. I mean, it's huge. And that, it all comes down to the value proposition.
That's right. And a lot of those folks stay in Nebraska. Okay, I think we have time for about two more questions. This one comes from Virginia, UNMC class of 1976. Virginia asks, how do we address the affordability of higher education? I know that's a big question, but are there some brief ways to summarize solutions?
Yeah. So, in the best of all worlds and in other parts of this world, including in Western Europe and other parts, higher education is free to the families for those that qualify for it. And that is to say, there are standards of academic performance that relate to middle school, high school, college, graduate school, professional school, etc. And individuals are selected and provided academic pathways at no cost to them in return for service back to their communities and to the society that paid for their education. In the best of all worlds, we would have a competency-based system that would identify individuals based upon their aspirational educational goals, and we'd find a way to do that so that they would, quote, pay it forward. That is not the way it currently works in our country and certainly in our state. It is a delicate balance between what the state provides, what comes out of tuition, what comes out of private grants and contracts, and how the philanthropic community literally provides the air under our wings. And by the way, while I didn't have a chance to say it earlier, I just want to express the gratitude to all of our alumni who actively participate in the philanthropy that makes us possible for us to build new buildings, start new programs, recruit and retain talented faculty and staff, create scholarship programs that keep higher education affordable. All I can tell you is that there is not a day that goes by that we don't ask the question of what can we do to provide better access, more affordability, and higher value. I'm not interested in necessarily in having the least expensive academic programs in the country, or even in the state for that matter. I am interested in having the highest value. I want to be sure that every student, not some students, but that every student has the opportunity to achieve their goals, and that to each of them, not in aggregate, but individually, that those goals that they achieved are valuable to them, whether it relates to their earning ability, whether it relates to social mobility, whether it relates to their ability to work in a soup kitchen, which, frankly, is something I've done in my previous life for many years, something that gave me a great sense of satisfaction. And those are the ways that we increase the value proposition for our university. And so, yeah, we're going to keep tuition and fees and other costs of attendance as low as possible. But we're also going to stay laser focused on making sure the value proposition is always strong.
Thank you, Dr. Gold. Okay, our last question is a compilation of many questions we've received from our alumni audience. And that is, what can we do? How can alumni specifically support the university beyond fundraising and contacting elected officials? And I should note that we have a number of out-of-state alumni joining us who would like to know how they can help as well.
Sure. Well, first of all, I want to thank all the hundreds and hundreds of alumni who have joined us this morning and tell you how much I appreciate you and the opportunity to do this. And this will not be the last time that we will do this. Being knowledgeable about where our opportunities and challenges are, being proud of your university is a very important thing. And being able to communicate it both within the state and outside of the state, because that is what builds reputation. You know, if your next door neighbor's child is applying to college, you might say next time you have coffee with them or barbecue when the weather gets a little bit warmer, did you apply to the University of Nebraska? And if not, why not? And by the way, if you don't know anything about it, call Dr. Gold. He'll tell you how great the University of Nebraska is. And believe me, I call families all the time. I meet with every single family in many of our scholarship programs. I've met with, I think, every student that's in the Presidential Scholars Program and their families and all those that have applied, make a lot of phone calls, etc. Love to do that because I have a great sense of pride. But more importantly and more critically right now, the combination of what is actively ongoing at the federal and at the state level really needs your advocacy, really needs you to lean in, make phone calls, write letters, tell folks how important the current and future stability of the University of Nebraska system is to you as an alum, not just to the state, for those of you that are out of state, but equally and more importantly, about what it means to you and your connection to us. And if you need more information as to what some of the talking points might be, please feel free to go to the websites, and the linkages will all be in the letter that we will share with you. But if you need more information, please feel free to contact me or to contact Matt Bloomstead directly, and we'd be very, very pleased to talk you through the messages that we are trying to share.
Thank you. Absolutely. And through your alumni associations as well, we would love to equip all of you to be our ambassadors. I know that many of you are doing that, and it's not usually the one big thing you can do. It's the dozens of little things. And so we appreciate that. It's about time to wrap up. Dr. Gold, anything else that you want to leave folks with today?
Sure. Well, first, again, I want to say thank you, and it's been a great honor to be with you today. And then secondly, very briefly, almost exactly a month ago, I had the opportunity to be in our nation's capital and to join the University of Nebraska-Lincoln Combined Choir and Professor Peter Eklund that performed in the rotunda of the United States Capitol a piece called One Voice. And I thought that our alumni might be interested in sharing that experience. So in the email that's going to come out, we're going to provide you with a link to the video from that performance. And I will tell you, it will bring tears to your eyes, an incredible amount of pride for seeing our students have that unique opportunity. This is a truly extraordinary organization, and I thank you for being part of it.
Yes, do watch the video. It's wonderful. It'll warm your heart on this cold winter day. In closing, thank you, Drs. Gold and Bloomstead, for spending time with our alumni today. And thanks to all of you, our alumni family, for your time and interest. We are, without question, a better university when our alumni are actively engaged. We are grateful to you for your passion, your advocacy, and your support. Please watch for that follow-up email with a link to this session, as well as some additional information about how you can continue to be part of the conversation. Thank you again, and good day.
Thank you.